here. Good afternoon. I'm Mike Van Dusen, Executive Vice President of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today for this Directors Forum with Prime Minister Iveta Radicová, I will get that, Prime Minister of Slovakia. I hope you all had an opportunity to see the small sculpture of the bust of Alexander Dubček in the hallway near the elevator on this floor of our building as you came towards this room. It is a wonderful symbol for this institution. I pass it every day. It is a constant reminder that people and strong and inspirational leaders can make an enormous difference. Dr. Radicová joins us for the 10th annual Czech and Slovak lecture. This important series was initiated in November 2000 by the Czech and Slovak embassies in Washington. This series, which continues to be co-sponsored by the two embassies, commemorates the inspiring struggle for freedom by the Czech and Slovak peoples. Over the last 10 years, the lecture series has given the Wilson Center and its European Studies program the privilege of hosting, among others, Secretary Madeleine Albright, Adam Michnik, the Solidarity leader and a prominent newspaper editor, and Václav Klaus, the President of the Czech Republic. This lecture series is sponsored by the Friends of Slovakia and the American Friends of the Czech Republic, along with the Embassy of Slovakia and the Embassy of the Czech Republic. I would like to recognize and thank the Ambassador of Slovakia to the United States, Peter Burian, who's here today, as well as Ted Russell, former United States Ambassador to Slovakia and founding chairman of the Friends of Slovakia, and I believe Tom Dine, Phil Kasich, and Peter Raffaelli of the Friends of the Czech Republic for their support of this program. Dr. Radicová has had an extraordinary career. She is very much in the Wilsonian tradition, a scholar as well as a policymaker. She graduated from Comenius University in Bratislava in 1981 with a doctorate in sociology. She has taught there since. In 1990, she first entered politics as a member of the Public Against Violence movement, serving as a party spokesman. In 2005 and 2006, she served as Minister of Labor, Social Affairs, and Family under a center-right government, and then was elected a member of Parliament. Subsequently, she was elected Deputy Chairman of the Slovak Democratic and Christian Union Democratic Party. She also served as Deputy Chairman of the Parliamentary Committee on Social Affairs and Housing. In early 2010, Dr. Radicová was selected as the Slovak Democratic and Christian Union Democratic Party's election leader for the 2010 parliamentary elections. In the June elections, her party came in second to the center-left Smerna party of Prime Minister Robert Fico. But the failure of the Prime Minister's party to form a coalition opened the door for Dr. Radicová to form a center-right coalition with the Freedom and Solidarity Party, the Christian Democratic Movement, and the ethnic Hungarian Most Heed Party. The Prime Minister has graciously agreed to take some questions after her initial remarks. And I might just add, and I would ask for a round of applause, that in New York earlier this week, she was awarded the prize in politics for the most outstanding woman in 2010. Madam Prime Minister, welcome to the Woodrow Wilson Center. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and pleasure for me to be here. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's really great pleasure for me to be here today with you, and I'm honored to address this auditorium within the framework of the Freedom Lecture, just a few days before the forthcoming 21st anniversary of the Czechoslovak Velvet Revolution, the cornerstone in the modern democratic history of the both nations, Czech and Slovaks. Slovakia started its new path towards democracy, encouraged by its Western partners to implement deep reforms in all aspects of our lives. The road to the EU and to the transatlantic structures was not always smooth, and we should not forget the role and assistance of our friends who have helped us to achieve this goal. And again, it was not an accident that 2 years ago your country abolished visas for Slovak citizens, symbolically just at the time of the anniversary of our Velvet Revolution. This act also demonstrates the confidence and the acknowledgement of the United States towards Slovakia as a respectable and reliable partner of the United States. Speaking about almost 2 new modern decades of the close Slovak-American relationship, as you know, the diplomatic relations between our countries were established on 1st January 1993. We should also remember the common roots dating back to the beginning of the 20th century. Pittsburgh Declaration of 1918 and the 14 points of President Woodrow Wilson supporting efforts of the Czechs and Slovaks for freedom and establishment of the common state became popular and part of our heritage. Therefore, it is not an accident that in 1918 Bratislava city was also called Wilson town, and we do have Wilson Street in Bratislava and Wilsonic Festival as a symbol of free and open megalopolis. Tomorrow, Americans commemorate Veterans Day. However, today it is the birthday of Slovak, who is not unknown to America. Follow me, and I'll bring you all safely home to your mothers. This famous sentence he used to say to his fellow soldiers, and they did follow him. On November 10, in 1919, Michael Strank was born. Slovak by birth, an American citizen by naturalization, Michael Strank raised the US flag over Iwo Jima with his platoon. Nothing speaks better today about the character of our relationship than Michael Strank. We are indebted to him as we are to those Americans who helped Slovakia under the communism and supported us on our way back to the family where we belonged for centuries. Nowadays we feel our responsibility as a NATO member, and we acknowledge the role NATO plays in our transatlantic security. Slovakia clearly demonstrates its contribution to the stabilization efforts of Afghanistan through its contingent participating in ISAF. Just a few days ago, on 3rd November, the Slovak government agreed to strengthen our military mission in Afghanistan, increasing the number of Slovak soldiers from 299 to 348. Also, with regards to this connection, I would like to highlight our Slovak American relationship and cooperation. And we feel our responsibility and remain committed to share our experience with those countries which are also on the path to the EU and NATO, while supporting them and assisting in their efforts in building democratic institutions, enforcing the rule of law, free market economy, strengthening individual freedoms, human rights and respect to minorities. Slovakia is very much in favor for the future EU and NATO enlargement, providing that countries of Western Balkans and other regions are able to prove their readiness. We are encouraging them also in a regional cooperation using experience regarding our own regional collaboration and partnership within the framework of the Visegrad Group, of which the Slovak Republic took over the rotating presidency this year. Friends, Karel Čapek wrote, "The Creator made Europe small and even divided her up into tiny parts so that our hearts find joy not in size, but in diversity. To enjoy and understand diversity, however, requires a high degree of openness, liberty, responsibility, and tolerance. Getting rid of the fear of otherness, solidarity, and the protection of human rights should be the tools of creating a common, diverse world. The coexistence of national and supranational identity lies in ways how to bring closer and hold together diversity. The road to reaching this goal is full of trials and problems and disasters. The decision means a resolve to retreat from one's own individual and individualized, often egocentric notions of fulfilling life's necessities and interests. Taking the road of seeking and carrying out common welfare, unlike warfare, has its own socio-economic, political, and cultural dimension. I first set foot in a country behind the Iron Curtain on April 1st, 1990. And to be open, it was in Oxford, it was shock for me. Not in negative way, in positive way. Shock because the language I had studied at home was something, but not English. I didn't understand nothing. They didn't understand me. I was crying each day and have a phone calls to my husband, humorist Stanley Radic, and ask him, please divorce me. I am really not able to survive here. I am not the woman you can live whole life because I am not able to do nothing here. It was the shock not only because of the official language, but also unwritten rules of behavior. I didn't understand what to do, where to go. And once they asked me, and I had the privilege to participate in a so-called high table. I dressed myself to the white suit, as it was written. It was not mine, but I borrowed it from Turkish princesses. Only white dresses I have had when on my wedding, and this I had on with me in Oxford. And it started, they looked at me what I will do, because only one woman, 20 men, I absolutely didn't know what to do. From one room to another room to the third room, when I used all the phrases concerning the weather, you know, the fear in the eyes, what to do next. And after 1 hour and a half, we went to the room where this high table, it means dinner should start. 3 absolutely the same tables. I found the right one. I hope so. And they told, okay, the dinner should start, and they started it with the sound of the gong. And I had the glass with red wine in my hands. You know the end of the story. The red wine was everywhere on my white dresses. They started to run around me and to try to help me, and the only sentence I was able to say was, "I'm deeply sorry, but I am from the Eastern Bloc." Yes, I am seeing here Zorka Butorova and Martin Butora, co-authors of a very good theoretical study named Learned Helplessness. I was a typical example in 1990. And I think that majority of our country was typical example. And where we are now, I am Prime Minister. The transformation of the so-called Eastern Bloc and Slovakia, a former part of socialist Czechoslovakia integrated into the Soviet sphere of influence, took place under the more complicated conditions than in other Visegrad countries. Almost 2 decades later, we can say that Slovakia managed to successfully master its basic challenges. It succeeded in establishing a pluralistic democratic system, a market economy, and an independent state, as well as the integration into the Euro-Atlantic community. Even though in people's mind, the Velvet Revolution, which brought the fall of communism, has become one of the most positive events in modern Slovak history, as Zorka Butorova wrote, we still cannot say that the majority has enthusiastically embraced the new way of life, which was formed under the influence of a complicated social and economic transformation. By contrast, not an insignificant part of the population found more shortcomings in the post-communist regime than in the previous one. The development of attitudes towards both regimes resembled more a wavy line than a continual strengthening towards the side of the supporters of the new establishment. The democratization of totalitarian regimes itself was no linear, simple, or without serious disasters. Both at the beginning of the 1990s as well as later during the building of an independent state. Tendencies towards authoritarianism and the undermining of democratic institutions accompanied the transition towards a new regime. The most significant swing towards the current regime occurred in 2006, when the proportion of supporters of the present regime clearly outweighed the critics. It still, however, has not become the sentiment of the majority of the population. Civil and political rights, as well as democracy, clearly dominate among the advantages which people value with regard to the present regime. On the other hand, their critique of the new establishment is rooted especially in their loss of long-term social securities. One of the reasons for frustration was the widespread notion that after the fall of communism, those who had privileged positions before, former managers of state companies and officials of the Communist Party, retained them. People reflect the type of change that occurred in our countries, not a circulation of elites, but a significant reproduction of elites. Behind people's insistence on the strong role of the state lies especially their critical reaction to social inequalities, which significantly grew under the new economic conditions. The public was not ready for the deepening social differentiation. The communist area instilled in their minds an ideal of equality, which refused differences in the compensation of workers based on their varying productivity or added value for society. After 1989, the leveling of Slovak society started to disappear, and under the influence of the new social differentiation, the vast majority of the population has come to believe that the new economic differences among people are less just than under the socialism. At the end of the election term in April 2006, the effects of the reforms were clear. People had the opportunity to compare their previous fears with reality. The majority of them no longer felt such strong opposition to the carried out reforms, with the exception of the healthcare reform. You know about this something? That would translate into a call for their fundamental alteration. The most represented attitude assisted the reforms as basically good, but requiring fine-tuning and improvement of details. An important factor which added in the increase of economic optimism was Slovakia's admission into European Union on March 1st, 2004. The Slovak public strongly supported these steps, and its positive attitude strengthened even more after achieving membership of Slovakia in the EU. Even within the Central European region and the Visegrad countries, Slovakia, together with Poland, are among the more Euro-optimistic countries. Contentment with EU membership pertains to several circumstances, notably the fact that negative scenarios predicting a dramatic rise in the price of food, services, etc., didn't materialize following Slovakia's entry into the EU. To the contrary, since 2004, the Slovak economy had grown, real wages grew, inflation was low, and unemployment falling. Despite the fact that this favorable macroeconomic development didn't occur only as a result of EU membership and was taking place alongside lasting regional and social disparities, it still managed, together with other non-economic benefits, to contribute to the positive evaluation of EU membership. The coin always has two sides. And the other side of the coin, the disadvantages of EU membership, is represented in public opinion mostly by the abuse of cheap labor force in Slovakia, the departure of experts and young people from Slovakia, and by fears of decreasing living standard of the population. In the short term, the majority of the population will probably evaluate the direction of the country and the achievements of its political representation, above all through the prism of one's own valid. For the fulfillment of the modernization challenges facing Slovakia, however, it will be crucial to what extent the decisions of the political representation focus on long-term investments into education and the environment, as well as the support of a real equality of opportunities, respect of human rights, and non-discrimination. And what we are facing at present? Several challenges. Economic stability, for which my government is paving the way with an ambitious plan of consolidating public finances. Reduction of corruption. Yesterday, your dailies was not really good message for us. Tunneling as a typical feature of Slovak Republic. And we really have to do, and we have already started, very important changes concerning anti-corruption program. Further reform and simplification of the tax and contribution system. Reform of the judicial system to improve the rule of law. Decreasing of administrative burdens for doing business, and more flexible labor code, making it easier to create jobs. 20 years after Velvet Revolution, we can be content with the political as well as international achievements we have attained. Our next big step in building and creating democracy is to strengthen transparency and fight corruption, mainly by publishing of public contracts as a prerequisite of their validity, through electronic public procurement, more transparent judicial system, including the publication of judgments via the internet, increased protection of whistleblowers, and many other measurements. Democracy is weak, and if we really would like to see stronger support and trust of population, the only way is to decrease corruption, to increase their trust to our justice, and to increase the trust to politicians. It's not an easy task. But I'm sure that democratization is the protection of diversity. The story of contemporary Europe is unique in the complementary and parallel strengthening of national identities, together with the respect for the spirit and values of Europe. Several profound changes took place in one historical moment: the transition of totalitarian regimes, the emergence of new independent states, and the enlargement and strengthening of supranational union. The evaluation of a regime is significantly connected not only to expectations, but also to the reflection of one's own gains and losses, which the change of the regime has brought. From this perspective, two opposing streams will always emerge. The first open to the transformation, characterized by the will for significant socio-economic change. We can call this group as the supporters of the post-November regime. And the second, close to transformation and rejecting it, which groups opponents. This diversity is the natural result of diverse political values and economic orientations, differing social and cultural capital, political affiliations concentrated around basic political subcultures, and the socio-demographic differentiation of society. I would like to change the label of our country. I would like to change the label as a country of tunneling and corruption to the country as, once more, the tiger of Europe and good example of democracy, legal state, and trust. So to conclude, the differences will always remain. They provide for continuity of dynamics and the dynamics of equilibrium. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Madam Prime Minister. Dr. Radicová has agreed to take some questions, and please raise your hand and a microphone will be given to you. As we are broadcasting this event, we would like to have your comments, your question, clearly understood. Who would like to ask a question? Yes, down. The lady in the second row. Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah.
Madam Prime Minister, my name's Wendy Lewers, and I started Nadacja Občanská společnost in January 1, 1990, and in Slovakia in 1993, and our successor is Nadacja Pontis, as you well know. Mm-hmm. That is all to say that my next question, which isn't going to be easy for you to answer, is not hostile in any way. I love your country. When I was so excited to hear you say that Slovakia, under your government, is supporting the Western Balkan states in getting into the EU. Slovakia has been openly against Kosovo's membership. Could you comment on the way you see your government handling this now?
After each question?
Yeah,
okay.
after each question.
Thank you very much. We understand what does it mean to create new state. We deeply understand the procedure which is needed to be democratic procedure that should be based on agreement of both sides. Otherwise, it's always the place of tension. For several years, we are supporters of Serbia and their preparation and entrance to EU. And we are really looking forward that also one of the last summits of EU expressed the will to start a dialogue in between Belgrade and Pristina. So this is also our position. If there is dialogue in between Belgrade and Pristina, is the precondition then to evaluate next steps also in the position of Slovak Republic. At present, there are no changes.
Yes, the gentleman at the end of the row.
My name is Demeter Polgar. I'm a correspondent of the Hungarian news agency in Washington. And my question is, Madam Prime Minister, that probably the only country which with Slovakia experienced some tension during its existence is Hungary. And since your accession to power, the relations have improved significantly, but still there are problems. So how do you see what should be improved in this connection to take a positive step forward? The language law, the citizenship law, what is your take on that?
Thank you very much. Citizens in majority of EU countries have the same problems. We all are facing terrible effects of economic crisis. We all are facing solving the very high deficits. We all are facing to solve very high rate of unemployment. Not only EU but also United States is facing and trying to find the solutions how to create new jobs. It means employment policy as one of the first priority for everybody of us. So there are too many problems we are facing, and very common problems. And if we are neighbors, then we have more instruments how to support each other to solve such a problem through regional cooperation, through formulating of our common aims, our common interests. First time, before the summits, I started to organize working meetings of representation of Visegrad 4, and I have to say that with very fruitful results. Not only as we agreed together What does it mean for us, so-called permanent crisis mechanism? What kind of conditions should be implemented inside, like regulated state bankruptcy or participation of private sector and bank sector in avoiding the financial crisis, but also the position towards pension reform. That those countries who are in the process of pension reform should be accounted differently as the countries without reforms concerning sanctions and deficits. So many common issues. And it's always in the hands of politicians what kind of politics they would like to do. If the politics of finding always the enemies, it's very easy. Doesn't matter if the enemy are medias, doesn't matter if the enemy are opposition, doesn't matter if the enemy are intellectuals or experts, but enemies. Or you try to find what is common, and where there are problems, to try to find a way how to solve it on both sides. And we agreed with Prime Minister Orbán that both sides are prepared to find solutions. Mainly the law on citizenship. Yes, it was ratified by Hungarian parliament. The reaction of Slovak government was, how to call it, not very clever. I try to be diplomatic.
The room's full of diplomats.
I have informed Mr. Prime Minister that we will pass new law concerning on citizenship law in the way that such law will have no effect in Slovak Republic. But we are against such solutions which are oriented on concrete citizen, and then the concrete citizen has a problem, what to do, is penalized because of double citizenship. It's not the way how to solve it. So we will change the solution. And I have informed Prime Minister, as I have mentioned, that we will do it. And his answer was, yes, I understand. You have to react, you have to solve this problem, but I am sure that as we revitalized the working groups of experts concerning the treaty in between Slovak Republic and Hungary, and they will work very intensively on further definition of citizenship law or language law. And changes in language law are at present in Parliament, and also new citizenship law.
Madam Prime Minister, there's several people in another room, and a softball and a hard ball came from the other room. I'll give you the softball now. You've had two hard questions. Please comment on the influence of your Fulbright scholarship on your subsequent career. Did you plant that one? The next question will be the lady in the corner after this one.
It was not only my knowledge, understanding of another continent, another political system, another culture, but also I had chance to understand what does it mean not to think in small Slovak boundaries. So new open-minded thinking, understanding of the world and connection, and during globalization, yes, we are Slovaks and we are proud. and very proud, but to be proud meant mainly to have a country without such titles in newspapers like it was yesterday. So I would like to postpone Slovak Republic to really standard, maybe modern standard, modern democratic country. And Fulbright, my stage here in New York, was a very important part of such understanding. What does it mean to be proud Slovak?
Very good. The lady in the corner and then the gentleman in the second row here.
Thank you. Sharon Wolchik, George Washington
Hi.
University. Hello. As someone who, prior to entering politics, was a scholar who studied, among other things, gender issues, I would be interested in your reflections on the implications of your campaign for the presidency and now your selection as Prime Minister for gender equality in Slovakia and specifically for the role of women in politics. Thank you.
Sharon, here is Zorka Butorova. She is expert. I can tell you only what I have read in her studies. But okay, analytical background you really can read in very. I have read also the last publication on election 2006, on also through gender differentiation. So I will not try to do some kind of reproduction of expert analysis, but what I feel, my feeling. Presidential campaign was, I think, very important. And I repeat, I am the happiest millionaire in the world, as I have received 1 million voices in Slovakia. And it was a new phenomenon in Slovakia. There were women in campaign before, very well known, Magda Vašáriová, first time Šmegnerová, and at the parliament, so I was not the first one. But it's true that maybe first time with such result in the second round and such near to be the winner. Okay, why not to repeat it? But the voting right in former Czechoslovakia we have received in 1918, but fulfilled it was in 1919. It's less than 100 years. And 1,000 years, always the power was in majority in the hands of men. Hungarian Austrian Empire, there were only 2 queens, one only 3 years. She died when she was 25 years. And then very famous Queen Maria Theresia with all the reforms. So if there is a woman, then successful. I think that I'm really not satisfied with the number of the women in highest position, but I think that we are some kind of tsunami in Slovakia. As Prime Minister in Central European countries, I think it's the tsunami.
Madam Prime Minister, congratulations both on your election and your tsunami, but also on what you've said in your remarks, which I want to come back to and ask a question about. I should identify myself, Adrian Basora. I had the honor of serving as a U.S. ambassador during the period of the Velvet Divorce and 1992-95, and with great admiration for what you have done in Slovakia and the Czech Republic. The reason I want to congratulate you on some of what you said is that you have analyzed perfectly as I understand it after 5 years of scholarship, looking at the post-communist transitions at a project based at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, is you have emphasized corruption of the things that are still keeping back public support for, majority support for democracy. Corruption, social inequality, and lack of trust in even the legal system, let alone politicians. Mm-hmm. I had the help of Martin Butura on my advisory committee for this project on democratic transitions, Sharon Walczyk, also a woman named Alina Munju-Pipidi, who has studied corruption particularly closely and the comparative and negative, very negative effects in the post-communist transitions. Most of the countries of the region have suffered severely from the problem, as you know. Mm-hmm. So my question is focused on that, and it's very simple, because many politicians have been elected on the tide of resentment against corruption, and many have promised to do something about it. In very specific terms, may I ask what you plan to do that is different and thus be more effective, and thus, as a woman leader, help strengthen the tsunami? Thank you.
The answer should be very short. We have already started. If you have a look on the website of our government, you can find all agreements, tenders publicly since the year 2000. And it was first tsunami in the country. Secondly, there is a decision of the government for electronic auctions. And each process of selling or buying something is only through electronic auctions. No other possibility. Third, there is always ratified and passed in the parliament the law that there is no chance for tender without publicity, public control, and 10 days it's open, and anybody should argue or should send a protest, and then the agreement is not ratified and signed. There are several laws on changes on judicial system already passed in the parliament, and several such things that commission, which is choosing the winner, is public. Everybody can know the names and their responsibility. Also those who lost in the competition, they will be published, and they are published. So there is widespread public control, and at the level of EU, this anti-corruption program was evaluated as one of the best they ever have seen, and more than its standard in other countries of Europe. So I think it started to work. We can see it. We reevaluated all contracts from the past. Only in the Office of Government, I have now €5 million because I cancelled the contracts which were very far what we can call fair competition. The same we are doing in big projects on IT. The same we are doing in all public projects through different firms, and you'll be surprised how many financial sources we now have and we can use for future, but not as a part of corruption, but as normal financial sources for citizens. You know, one example for everything, if there is a company and after decision at my office that this tender was not correct and I stop it, and they immediately are prepared to do it for half of the price. The question is, what's the real price? 10%. So we cancelled several such projects at the Ministry of Education, in each ministry, and I will keep it, believe me.
Is there any prosecution of past corruption, or is that something that's too...
Yes, several such contracts are now at the court, and I think that some of the persons will be imprisoned.
The government sounds serious. One question from the other room, and then the lady in black in the third row here, black jacket. Speaking of diversity in light of recent events in Europe, what, if any, concrete measures to address poverty and disenfranchisement of the Roma minority has the government planned?
Oh, how long?
Another easy question.
It's not easy question. Always when there is a crisis, the poverty and especially such group as the Roma, there is decrease of the standard of living twice, several times deeper than in other parts of society. Look at France, look at other countries, how deep problem this is. In Slovak Republic, we have three main clusters of Roma. We have integrated Roma in the society and very famous and with very good positions. We have so-called separated Roma living together, but not so integrated to the society, but active with education. And we have this group of segregated Roma communities, which are living in absolute poverty, without education, and for this group, which is around 1/3 of Roma community in Slovakia, there is absolutely necessary to have very specific projects for each community. There is no possible to have one central program because each segregated Roma community in different regions, you can really find totally different, not totally, but different measurements, instruments, how to help this community. Some of the projects were very successful, and what can government do is to prepare legal conditions for such projects and financial resources for such projects. I am sure that without partnership of different subjects like self-governments, government, NGOs, school, healthcare, community center, we have no chance to solve such problems. And three priorities then they are education, housing, employment. And I will stress the sentence of very famous sociologist Lord Ralph Dahrendorf, who openly said that part of Roma communities is unemployable. You cannot employ them at a standard labor market. So what we have to do is preparation of specific jobs for these kind of communities. And it needs time. It's not possible to do from one day to another. And as a background, absolutely necessary is to work with majority of population in Slovakia, because there is very tiny relation to the segregated Roma communities, and if you prepare programs only for Roma communities in the region when there is very high rate of unemployment, then result is that they are building the walls and the tensions are very high and it's very dangerous. So you have to implement regional projects, not only specifically for Roma community, but also for those who are long-term unemployed in the region. Otherwise, there is no chance to be successful.
I have two quick questions, one here and then the back in the corner. Very quick. Yeah.
Madam Prime Minister, thank you very much. Actually, that was my question about the Roma community. How do you address, perhaps even in eastern Slovakia, where the further right is getting more support because they have quote-unquote tougher stance against the Romska problematika or the Roma question? Is that something that the government is planning on addressing, or is that something not? Thank you.
Slovakia, after these last 4 years, not only because of economic crisis, but also because of really non-responsible decisions of former government, and I have to stress it. As it is written also, I repeat, in the newspapers last day, is really a problem. The result is, and in few sentences, 2/3 of population has lower income than 500 euros. In the region of Prešov, you are asking me, 80% lower income than 500 euros. During these 4 years, there are deeper differences among the regions. We have regions with the unemployment rate higher than 30%. The average is 15%. So what's the task for government? Jobs, 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 and income from jobs, and solving the unemployment, and preparing the conditions for investment, and better conditions for entrepreneurship, and less administration, and more support to investments, to new technologies, to research, to innovations, and reform of our education system, because there is still a gap in between what really market needs and what our graduates are, how they are qualified, and deep reform, and I can continue. So work, work, and work.
The last question in the corner, please make it quick.
I'm Michael Kopanic po slovensky. Matka sa narodila na Slovensku. But I'm a historian, and I work for the University of Maryland University College, and I also write for the Slovak American newspaper, Jednota. In fact, I wrote an article on you a little over a month ago. I was interested in what you were just talking about. So for instance, I have 5th, 6th cousins over there in Slovakia, and they can't find work. And they're in eastern Slovakia, in southern and eastern Slovakia.
I know.
Unemployment is just so high. And 2 people my age or a little younger, and they just cannot find work. They lost their jobs, or they were small entrepreneurs. It's one of the biggest problems. The regional differentiation has not been solved. And in Bratislava, I know unemployment is very low, but over there, there's just no movement. And so many have gone abroad. They've come back. Now that Ireland's economy is bad, all those people are back in Slovakia. They just don't know what to do. And, of course, this can lead to crime, social problems, divorce, et cetera, you know, as a sociologist.
Is there a question there?
But, yeah, I was wondering, what's the big plan? And you did address that somewhat. And the second thing I was wondering about was your decision not to support the European Union in helping Greece. Now, I know most Slovaks support that, but Don't you think that's a very dangerous precedent as far as European unity is concerned? So maybe you should stick to that one, because this other problem is so big, and you did talk about it somewhat. Thank you. Ďakujem.
Sorry, that's another very big question.
Unemployment, employment policy, and regional differences. Several programs. First of all, last government, from 8 biggest investments in Slovakia, 7 were put to the western part of Slovakia. So the first thing we have done were the changes in the law concerning investments, higher level of unemployment, bigger, stronger support for foreign investments in the region. It is the first thing. Second, we already have started building public infrastructure as a sphere of new jobs. We have programs to support public infrastructure, building highways. We already have started in the eastern of Slovakia, and first 2 new investments and new jobs were in eastern Slovakia. First, my decision of my government was to the eastern Slovakia. Plus, government decided that we have 5 priorities. First priority, support for creation of the job. It means also increasing the state budget and financial sources for this program. Secondly, building and supporting public infrastructure and highways. Third, we have increased the financial resources to social policy and social protection and family policy. Fourth, we have increased the financial resources to the healthcare system because of quality of life. And fifth, we have established first time new budget, a state budget, together with euro sources for prevention of the floods and other natural catastrophes. And through this program, we will create 30,000 new jobs. And together with this program, there are so-called green jobs, as you have also known from states. And third program is the program of recultivation, revitalization of countryside. Also with jobs and growth and green jobs as a part of the program, how to create new jobs in such regions like you have mentioned. Greece aid. There is no problem at all at the EU. Opposite. We are very strong partner at present at the EU. At the last summit, it was our position and our co-author as a co-author of the decision that permanent crisis mechanism should have all instruments against moral hazard, involvement of bank sectors, sanction system, etc., etc. Also, it's the result of Slovak Republic that once more ECOFIN is preparing the mechanism how to evaluate already mentioned pension reform. I think we were very successful in negotiation at the last summit. Now we are working very intensively on these concrete instruments. In December we will have them at the summit. We are very closely cooperating with Finland because we like more the model they have prepared than the model of Germany. And how I am here sitting, there was no sentence at all concerning Greece aid. Nothing. The only situation was, okay, yes, you have your arguments, we know, and we are also not happy that we have decided in this way, and that's why new permanent crisis mechanism should be established, because aid didn't help. And maybe I will conclude with the sentence of Prime Minister Papandreou. I apologize, in quotation these words, I apologize to all countries that we were the reason of their political troubles. And I am sorry. I would not like be in the position of Greece Prime Minister. It's not a good position at present at the summits. And last sentence. We are solidar with other countries, as we have agreed with financial crisis mechanism, this not permanent but for 3 years, because these two things are totally different. Media is trying to put it together, and these are two totally different things. We agreed, and we are prepared to help if it's necessary. But from the first moment, we stressed that there are several responsible entities, non-responsible governments, non-responsible rating agencies, non-responsible banks and financial markets, non-responsible Eurostat, and non-responsible Euro Commission. And if there are no changes in this institution, there is no guarantee the situation is not here once more and once more. And then it's never-ending story. I think it was time that somebody said it loudly. Okay, it was me.
Part of the tsunami. I would like to thank you very much, Madam Prime Minister. You've been marvelous and generous. I would like to ask Ted Russell and is it Phil Kasich going to come up with you for just 1 minute, a couple of minutes.
Thank you,
Phil Kasich here, and Tom Dine, come on up.
Madam Prime Minister, you have given us an extraordinarily lively and vivid presentation showing us why Slovakia has moved over the last 20 years from learned helplessness to a strong and vibrant democracy. And we applaud your leadership of the effort to make it an even stronger democracy. Your comments, I think, on the fight against corruption, on making politicians trusted again, I think they have real resonance, and we congratulate you and wish you well. We also deeply appreciate the strong sentiments of friendship towards the United States that you expressed, which are based on the shared values of our two societies. And so Friends of Slovakia would like to present you with our Medal of Honor, which you will note features the bust of Milan Rostislav Stefanik and the American Eagle.
Thank you very, very much.
Madam Prime Minister, my name is Tom Dine. I'm president of the American Friends of the Czech Republic. I've known Ted Russell for a while. I've known Mike Van Dusen longer than a while, and I'm happy to be on the same podium with them. In listening to you, there were two thoughts that came to my mind. Not only how reflective you are, how sophisticated you are, but you're such a breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
And on that particular note, I recall American history, the British-American relationship in 1940, the Lend-Lease program. How about Slovakia lending us you for a while to run our programs and face our problems? On behalf of the Friends of Slovakia and the American Friends of the Czech Republic, I present you this certificate of appreciation and to say, along with Ted, thank you for being who you are, what you are, and a friend of the United States.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here. You're welcome at the Woodrow Wilson Center anytime. I ask that you stay seated for a moment as the Prime Minister gets out of the room.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
I will run.
Who's the best attendant session we've ever had?
I'm sorry. You're Slovaks. I'm sorry. Really? I was late because we got other